I don't know the exact moment I vanished from my parents' world, but I do know it happened right after my little sister was born. I was 6, still young enough to believe in magic, Santa Claus, and bedtime kisses. I was excited to be a big sister. I remember hugging my mom's belly and talking to the baby, imagining all the fun we'd have together. But that dream didn't last long. My sister was born with severe autism. The doctor said she'd need a lot of care. What they didn't say was that I would disappear in the process. It started subtly. My bedroom, once warm and filled with the soft hum of family life, was taken. "She needs to be closer to us," they said, moving me into the basement. It was cold, damp, and smelled like old boxes and dust, the kind of place that makes a kid feel like a guest in her own home. Every night I'd lie there listening to the footsteps and laughter upstairs, wondering what I'd done wrong to be cast aside. My toys were next. One by one, they were broken, chewed, or destroyed. She didn't mean to, of course, but it hurt all the same. I begged my parents to make her stop. I just wanted them to acknowledge how it felt to watch everything I loved fall apart, but all I ever heard was, "She doesn't understand. You need to be more patient. You're the big sister." That phrase became a prison, "You're the big sister," as if that meant my feelings didn't count, as if being older meant I had to be invisible. I learned early that in my house, love was measured by sacrifice, and the more I gave up, the more they seemed to expect. I didn't hate my sister, not really, but I started to hate the way my life stopped mattering. I hated how every time she screamed, broke something, or needed attention, I simply ceased to exist. Looking back, I don't think anyone meant to erase me, but they did, and I've been living in that silence ever since. By the time I turned 13, I had mastered the art of being quiet, not just with my voice, but with my needs, my feelings, my presence. Middle school was rough, but I was doing well. I kept my head down, got good grades, and somehow managed to stay afloat, even when everything at home felt like a storm I couldn't escape. My teachers noticed my effort, and the school rewarded me with a MacBook to help with my assignments. It wasn't just a computer, it was mine. A small piece of independence in a world where everything felt borrowed. That laptop became my world. I used it to write stories, apply for scholarships, even research colleges late at night in the cold corners of the basement. For once, I felt proud, seen, until the day I came home and found it shattered on the floor. The screen was cracked, keys ripped off like petals from a flower. I stood there, frozen, clutching my backpack as the weight of that moment crushed me. My sister had gotten into my room, again. No one had thought to lock the door. No one had watched her. She didn't mean to break it, of course, but she did. And just like that, everything I had built was gone. I tried to explain to the school, but they blamed me for being careless, said I should have taken better care of it. When I told my parents, I expected something. Anything. Support, comfort, maybe even anger on my behalf. Instead, I got scolded. "You should have kept it out of reach," Mom said. "Stop making everything a crisis," Dad muttered. It wasn't just about the laptop. It never is it? It was about how no one cared that something important to me had been destroyed. Again, and I was expected to just take it. Again. I wasn't angry at my sister. I was angry at the way my pain was always made invisible, brushed off like an inconvenience. That laptop was my future, and it shattered on the floor, just like every part of myself I kept trying to hold together. That night, I cried into my pillow until I couldn't breathe, and no one noticed. By the time I turned 16, I couldn't remember the last time I did something for myself without checking over my shoulder. My name is Emily, and I've lived most of my life tethered to someone else's emergencies. My sister Katie is severely autistic. I love her, I do, but her needs always came before mine. Always. I used to dream of what freedom might feel like. A night out, a sleepover, even a few uninterrupted hours with my headphones on. So when Spider-Man No Way Home hit theaters, it felt like a lifeline. My best friend Jake had been counting down for weeks, and I let myself hope, just this once, that I could have something normal. We made plans. I bought my own ticket with babysitting money. I told myself, 2 hours, just 2. Before the movie started, I made the choice that would cost me dearly. I turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I laughed freely. I sat in the dark with popcorn in my lap and forgot about responsibility. I felt like a teenager, like a person. When the credits rolled, I turned my phone back on. It exploded with missed calls, voicemails, texts. My heart sank as the weight of guilt crashed down like a tidal wave. I rushed outside and called home. My mom picked up with a fury I didn't know she had. "Where were you? We needed you an hour ago." Katie had a meltdown and we couldn't calm her down. I tried to explain, tried to say I just needed a break, that I was sorry, but she cut me off. "You're selfish, irresponsible. We rely on you." I went home, grounded, lectured, shamed, for a movie. That night, lying in my bed, I felt the walls close in. My life wasn't mine. I was a live-in caregiver with no paycheck, no thanks, no permission to rest. And no one, not my mom, not my dad, asked if I was okay, because I wasn't. I was crumbling. A few weeks after the movie incident, I was chosen to give a speech at my school's recognition night. It was a big deal. Only a handful of students were selected, and I had poured my heart into it. Every word carefully crafted. It wasn't just a speech, it was a piece of me. A rare moment where the spotlight might finally fall on me, not on Katie. I told my parents the minute I got the news. I watched my mom nod absent-mindedly while spooning yogurt into Katie's mouth. My dad muttered something like, "That's nice, kid," without even looking up from the bills he was sorting. But still, I hoped. The night of the event, I wore the only dress I owned that didn't feel like an afterthought. I straightened my hair, practiced my speech 3 more times in the mirror, and kept glancing at the door. They said they'd come. They promised. The gym was packed. Parents with balloons, kids with flowers, smiles and cameras everywhere, and me, scanning every row of seats for a familiar face. I went on stage alone. I stood at the microphone and felt my hands shake. My eyes blurred as I looked out over the crowd, wishing, praying, to see them walk in late, even if it was just as I finished. But they didn't. They never came. Still, I delivered the speech. I talked about perseverance, about finding light in small victories, about hope. It felt like a cruel joke. People clapped. I smiled like it mattered. But walking home that night, I cried the whole way. Not because I was angry, but because I had finally understood something I'd been avoiding for years. It wasn't about the missed speech. It was about all the missed moments, all the times I was told to understand, to be patient, to wait my turn. But my turn never came. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered the truth I didn't want to admit. It probably never would. After the school speech incident, something inside me shifted. I became quieter, more distant. I started putting up walls, not to push people away, but to keep from being shattered again. One night, just a few weeks later, Dad and I were sitting at the kitchen table going over college brochures. For once, it felt like he saw me. Not as Katie's shadow, not as the built-in babysitter, but as his daughter with dreams of her own. I felt hope stir in my chest. Maybe college would be my way out. Maybe this was the turning point. He asked what I wanted to study. I told him I wasn't sure, but maybe something in psychology or communications. I said I just wanted a future that felt like mine. He chuckled and said, "Well, whatever you pick, make sure it pays well. You've got your sister to take care of when we're gone?" Just like that, my world stopped spinning. I looked at him, waiting for the laugh to fade, for him to say he was joking. But he didn't. He just kept flipping through the brochure like he hadn't said something soul-crushing. I don't remember the first words out of my mouth. I just remember snapping. The years of being overlooked, the missed birthday parties, the grounding over a movie, the ignored speech, all of it boiled over. I yelled, I screamed. I told him I was done being a second parent, that I never agreed to give up my life for someone else's, that I loved Katie, but I was not her safety net. He just stared at me, silent, stone-faced. My mom peeked into the room, then left just as fast. I expected him to be angry, to argue, to say something, but all he said was, "You're being dramatic." I ran to my room, slammed the door, and cried into my pillow until I couldn't breathe. And the worst part? They didn't come to check on me. Not that night, not the next morning, not ever. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about Katie's needs. It was about them never truly seeing me. My feelings didn't register. My dreams weren't real. and any future I wanted for myself would always be second to the one they'd already chosen for me. That night, something broke for good, and I wasn't sure it could ever be fixed. Hours passed in silence after that explosive moment with Dad. I stayed curled up on my bed, staring at the ceiling like it might hold some answer to everything I was feeling. Anger, sorrow, emptiness. Not once did I hear footsteps in the hallway, not a single knock. My parents were just absent, and not in the physical sense. They were gone emotionally, like I no longer existed in their world unless I was taking care of Katie. I waited until after midnight when the house was quiet before packing a small backpack. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't keep living in a house where I was nothing but a backup plan, where my entire future had already been signed away like I didn't get a say in it. I texted the only person I could think of, Grandpa. He always seemed to see me, not just as Katie's sister, but as me, a real person with thoughts, needs, and dreams. The message I sent was short and desperate. I need to leave. Can I come over? His response came within seconds. Doors open, sweetheart. Anytime. I slipped out the front door quietly, the same door I had walked through 1,000 times before, but this time it felt different. Final. Liberating. Like I was taking my first real breath in years. When I arrived at Grandpa's place, he didn't bombard me with questions. He just hugged me and said, "Took you long enough." That was all I needed to collapse into tears. We stayed up for hours, not talking much, just existing. There was something healing about the way he sat with me, fully present. No lectures, no guilt, no dismissing my feelings. Just space, something I had never realized I needed so badly. Over the next few days, I started to feel like me. I wasn't juggling crises or checking my phone every 10 minutes. I wasn't being scolded for needing space or told that my dreams were selfish. For the first time in years, I was just a teenager, a girl who had been through more than anyone should, finally learning that it was okay to want something more. And somewhere deep inside, a thought began to grow. Maybe I didn't have to go back. Maybe this could be the start of something better. Staying with Grandpa was supposed to be temporary, just a few days to cool off, to think, but those days stretched into a week and then another, and each passing day I felt a little lighter, like the weight of being the responsible one was finally easing off my shoulders. One quiet morning, I finally told Grandpa everything, the movie night, the speech they missed, the joke about college and taking care of Katie forever. I told him how I felt invisible in my own home, how I'd grown to resent the silence more than the arguments, because at least when they yelled, it meant they noticed me. I expected him to be shocked, maybe angry on my behalf, but nothing prepared me for the look on his face. It wasn't just disappointment, it was fury. Grandpa wasn't the type to lose his temper, but he looked like he was about to burst. "Wait a second," he said, voice trembling. "They've been telling the family that your sister has a professional caregiver. That's where the money has been going." I stared at him, confused. "There's no caregiver. It's just been me, for years." He stood up, pacing the room. "That's not just unfair, it's dangerous. You're a child, not trained support, and they've been taking money from the family for services they're not even providing?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. It was deception. My parents had built this false image of themselves to the outside world, claiming they were doing everything by the book, when in reality, they were leaning entirely on me. And no one knew. Later that night, the phone calls started. Aunts, uncles, even cousins I barely knew. Turns out Grandpa had made a few calls of his own. And one by one, the family began piecing it all together. The lie, the burden I'd been carrying alone. Their voices were filled with disbelief, guilt, and sorrow. Some cried, some apologized for not noticing sooner. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. I was heard. I was believed, and maybe, just maybe, I was beginning to be seen not as a caretaker, not as an afterthought, but as me. The days that followed were unlike anything I'd experienced before. Suddenly, family members who used to be strangers in my life were checking in. My Aunt Lydia stopped by with homemade casserole and warm hugs. My Uncle Jason took me out for ice cream and listened, really listened, as I told him how things had been at home. Everyone had questions. Everyone was shocked, but most importantly, everyone believed me. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. For so long, I thought no one would care. I'd gotten so used to bottling everything up that it didn't even cross my mind that people might actually want to help. But they did, and they were angry. Angry that my parents had kept so much hidden. Angry that they'd been giving money for a caregiver who never existed, and furious that I'd been the one carrying that weight all alone. Grandpa, bless his heart, became a quiet storm. Calm on the surface, but underneath, he was moving mountains. He made sure everyone in the family knew the full story, not out of revenge, but because he knew the truth had to come out. He called my parents and told them flat out, "From now on, she's not talking to you without me present." I can't describe the relief I felt in that moment. That weight, the one I'd been dragging around for years, finally started to lift. For once, I wasn't the one trying to hold the family together. They were holding me. But the biggest surprise came from the smallest moment. One evening, after dinner, Grandpa pulled out an old box of photo albums. We sat at the kitchen table flipping through pictures, baby photos, birthdays, Christmas mornings before things got heavy. He looked at a picture of me at 8 years old, grinning with a gap in my teeth, holding a toy pony. "You used to be so joyful," he said softly, "and I'm going to make sure you get that back." I nearly broke down right there, because someone saw me, not just as a sister or a helper or a problem to manage, but as a person who mattered. For the first time in forever, I wasn't just surviving, I was beginning to heal. I walked into that conversation with my parents hoping, praying, that things might finally start to change. It was a chilly Saturday evening. Grandpa sat beside me, steady as a rock, while my parents sat across the dining room table. The room was heavy with silence. For a second, I let myself believe they might say what I needed to hear. Maybe a real apology, maybe something close to love. Instead, it turned into something I'll never forget, and not in the way I'd hoped. My mom started off by saying they were worried about me, how I had overreacted and made everything about myself. I tried to explain how I'd been feeling for years, how I'd carried a responsibility no teenager should. I told them everything, from the movie night meltdown to the missed speech to the college joke that shattered my last bit of hope. They listened, but their faces were blank. And then my dad said the words that broke me. "We always knew you'd be the one to take care of your sister when we're gone. That's just how it is." Just like that, no emotion, like it was my role in life, not a choice, not a hope, just an obligation. I stared at them in disbelief. All the pain, the sacrifices, the tears, and this was their truth. Not only were they not sorry, but they were doubling down. Telling me out loud that I was born to be a caretaker, not a daughter, not a person, just a backup plan. I couldn't hold it in. I told them about the money, how everyone now knew they'd lied about hiring a caregiver. I told them how betrayed I felt, how they had used the family's support without ever giving me a break. Their response? Excuses, deflection, silence. I stormed out of that house feeling like I'd slammed a door on my entire childhood. Not out of anger, out of survival. Because that was the moment I realized they were never going to change. Not for me, not for anyone. Back at Grandpa's, I broke down. I cried until I couldn't breathe. And when I finally stopped, I looked at him and whispered, "I'm done." And for the first time, I meant it. The morning I officially moved out of my parents' house, the sky was gray and heavy. It felt fitting, like even the weather understood the weight of what I was about to do. Grandpa and Uncle Mike helped me pack. They were gentle about it, letting me move at my own pace, never pushing. Every item I touched, my books, photos, childhood trinkets, carried a story. Some beautiful, some unbearable. I packed them anyway. They were part of me, and I wasn't going to leave any more pieces behind. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom was standing at the door, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Dad wasn't there. He had taken my sister out for the day, probably to avoid the confrontation. I guess he knew I meant it this time. We moved quietly, carefully loading boxes into the car. Mom didn't say anything at first, just watched from the steps like a stranger watching someone else's life fall apart. The silence was deafening. Then, just as I was about to grab the last bag, she finally spoke. "I love you. I'll miss you." Her voice cracked. I turned to look at her, heart aching from everything that had happened. There was no dramatic scene, no big hug. I just nodded. "Goodbye, Mom." And that was it. I sat in Grandpa's truck as we pulled away, clutching the bag with my birth certificate and social security card, my old life in one hand, and a shaky beginning in the other. I didn't cry, not this time. I felt hollow but free. That night, in my new room at Grandpa's, I stared at the ceiling, replaying it all. Part of me wanted to believe Mom's words were real, that she did love me. But love without action feels a lot like silence. It doesn't keep you warm. Still, I'm here now. I've got a room with a door I can close, a future that's mine again. It's scary, it's lonely, but it's also real. And for the first time in years, I feel like I can finally breathe. Saturday night came faster than I wanted it to. I had agreed, reluctantly, to meet with my parents. Grandpa said he'd be there with me, and that helped settle the storm in my chest. I didn't know what I expected going in. Maybe some kind of apology, some kind of shift. A sign they finally saw me. What I got was the opposite. We sat in the living room, me, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad. My sister was in her room, thankfully. The air was thick. Mom looked tired. Dad looked stone cold. Dad started. "We know you've been upset, but you have to understand, it's your duty to help your sister. That's why you're here." I blinked. I actually blinked like I'd misheard him. "My duty?" He nodded like it was obvious. "Yes. When we're gone, she'll need someone. We've always counted on you." There it was, the confirmation that I wasn't a daughter, not a person with dreams or feelings. I was insurance, a safety net. I felt the blood drain from my face. I tried to speak calmly, but my voice shook. So my whole life? It's just been leading up to this. I was born just to take care of her? Mom tried to jump in, something about how they loved me, how proud they were. But none of it mattered, because when I brought up the lies, the fake caregiver they told the family about, the money they took from my aunt under false pretenses, they didn't deny it. They just deflected, excuses, defensiveness, no apologies. When I stood up, my legs were trembling. Grandpa put a hand on my back, steadying me. "You didn't just lose my trust," I said. "You lost me." I walked out. Grandpa followed. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling in his guest room, feeling like I'd just buried something I'd clung to my entire life. Hope, but even grief can bring clarity, and I knew in my bones that I was never going back. The morning after that disastrous conversation, I woke up with swollen eyes and a headache from crying. But for the first time in forever, I also felt free. Not because things were fixed, they weren't, but because I finally understood I didn't have to keep trying to fix what was never mine to repair. That same morning, I sat with Grandpa and my uncle at the kitchen table. We didn't talk much, just passed toast and scrambled eggs, but the silence was comforting. Eventually, I looked up and said it out loud. "I don't think I can go back. I don't think I even want to." They didn't act surprised. Grandpa nodded, quiet for a beat, then said, "You don't owe anyone your life." That hit hard, and it was the push I needed. By noon, I was officially moving in with Grandpa. My aunt, bless her, called to say she was transferring the money she used to send to my parents for my sister's care directly to me. "Use it for school," she said, "for your life." That same night, I started packing. Going back to the house was weird. My dad didn't even bother to be there. He took my sister out to avoid drama, which stung more than I expected. Mom stayed behind, just lingering as I gathered my things. She didn't say much until I was about to leave. She broke down in tears, whispered that she loved me, that she'd miss me. I hugged her back because I do still love her, but I didn't say I'd come home. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. Now, sitting in my new room at Grandpa's house, surrounded by boxes and 100 feelings I haven't fully unpacked, I'm trying to focus on the road ahead. My college applications are in progress. And for the first time, I'm picking schools based on my dreams, not anyone else's needs. I still worry about my sister. I still love her. but I also finally love myself enough to say I deserve more. This isn't the ending of my story. It's the beginning of the one I finally get to write for myself.